Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. So, I think you can all agree as business owners, we spend a lot of time focused on growth. So, advertising, generating more leads, closing more deals, hopefully, and also finding new customers. But what if our biggest obstacle to growth isn't necessarily bringing in more revenue? What if it's the revenue we're already losing? So, today we're going to talk about the hidden gaps that quietly drain profitability from our businesses and why more sales don't always translate into a healthier business, and how better systems within our businesses can help us capture more of the revenue that we're already earning. And joining us today is Candice Frazer, founder of AlphaRev, and she is helping businesses uncover the inefficiencies, broken processes, and missed opportunities that prevent sustainable growth, and even better, build operational systems that keep more revenue exactly where it belongs, which is right here inside our business. Candice, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Krista. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, very excited because when I think about, revenue leaking out of a business, that's really scary considering that as business owners, we all work really, really hard to keep revenue where it belongs. So, one of the things that you have talked a lot about is that we focus a lot on generating new revenue, but you've built an entire business around helping us identify revenue we're already losing. So my first question is, why do so many of us completely miss these leaks that are happening like right in front of us?
Yeah, it's a great question. And for those who are wondering, am I alone in this? And sometimes people are like, oh no, I'm so stupid. You're not. You're being fed a lot of information from the market on the whole. I have a client who came to me before we engaged with one another. They basically went out and said, we need to fill our funnel too. We need to bring in a lot of people, and we have the best way to do it. I was talking to this one person that's going to get us this list of 10,000 of our ideal clients. And they went out and bought that list. And they said, great, we're going to run a webinar campaign and we're going to email all these people and we're going to bring them in and we're going to put together this beautiful slides. It's going to be amazing. We're going to use all of this consumer psychology to get them engaged. And we're going to really convert all of these brand new people to our business. So they go through and they set up 3 different webinars. They optimize the webinars along the way. They optimize the email campaigns. And out of the list of 10,000, they got 0 new clients. 0. And
Wow.
it's not uncommon. So if this is hitting a little too close to home for any of the listeners today, this is something that's very, very normal because in the market, we're being told we need to do more all the time as it relates to revenue. We need more campaigns. We need more leads. We need more salespeople. We need a better sales leader. We need more, 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 more. The reason why this is occurring is because there are very, very strong voices in the market that are telling us that we need to do this. In fact, we've seen an explosion of marketing automation and marketing tools on the whole. Some of those strong voices may be familiar to the listeners here, include Mark Benioff, who's the founder of Salesforce, right? And kind of created the software as a service model. But Salesforce basically says, give me all your contact information, put it into my system. And then you'll be able to segment your list and send them messages, and you'll be able to see all the information in one place and dissect the data and really understand it. We also see this coming from other strong voices like the founders of HubSpot. And HubSpot created the inbound methodology, which basically says create more campaigns, create more contacts, create more landing pages, create gated content, which is fancy language for create this white paper, and then we're going to ask them for their email, and then we'll send them the white paper. But then we got their email so we could send them more emails. So they're really popular and it came to market in a really explosive way, so much so that they actually consider their competition not necessarily Salesforce or another tool, but they considered the New York Times to be their competition because they wanted to create so much content in market, right? More, more, more. We have Russell Brunson who created ClickFunnels. And basically, that is when you go to a landing page and if you ever felt like you were reading an encyclopedia, it's because of the methodology introduced through ClickFunnels, which is to provide a lot of information. But they're not the only 3. There are thousands upon thousands of people that are telling us. But those are 3 examples of strong voices. In fact, in 2011, there were 150 marketing technology tools that were available in market. Today, there are over 12,000. Over
Wow.
12,000 marketing technology tools that are available to us. And now it's just explosive growth with AI and the ability to vibe code. And there are so many tools that are available that a business owner has to ask themselves, what the heck do I use? But all I know is that all of these founders are telling me I need to do more. I need to put more out there. I need to put more into the system. I need to build this. I need to create campaigns. I need to do a podcast. More, 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 more. And the fact of the matter is, customer acquisition costs are increasing 220% over a 8-year period. Conversion rates on websites are decreasing at a measly 0.8%, putting it at basically like a little over 2% conversion rate for website visitors on the whole. And that's just to become a lead. Not to mention, more business owners are feeling financial stress. A study done by a bank identified that 58% of business owners are feeling that stress because they're being told they need to do more. So there's a fallacy that's out there that I and AlphaRev are busting through. You don't need to do more. There are plenty of opportunities that we say are hiding in plain sight. And so business owners are feeling this pressure because they're being told by these really strong voices when all they want to do is take your money. They don't want to make money with you. They really want your money, and that's it.
That absolutely can feel 100% overwhelming. I can relate to that. And within that, I mean, my gosh, 12,000 tools. That's just a sea of, well, which direction am I supposed to go in? And why do I use this one versus this one? And, never ending questions, which obviously then raises stress levels as well. So, but what you're really saying is we should look to our existing customer base and think more about how we can do more in a better way with what we already have. And I love that because we've already paid for those customers. They're already in our door. They already said, hey, you have something I want. So, but are there operational mistakes that you see happening as well that you think are costing us, very quietly in the background outside of the software?
Yes.
Because software costs can really drain you.
Yes.
Are there operational mistakes that are happening every single month that you think are draining us of revenue as well?
Absolutely, there are. And it's not even every month. I would say every day or even right down to every hour, depending on the customer journey. So, some operational mistakes that I see at many businesses making is that they're thinking about the customer journey, not necessarily from what is the client experiencing or the customer experiencing as it relates to their experience with us, but also how they're feeling about it on the whole. And if we're not meeting them both with the idea of, are we delivering on what we said we were going to deliver on? And are we understanding how they feel about it? I'll give you a really specific example. Many businesses misinterpret buyer's remorse. In fact, as soon as a customer signs on the dotted line or signs on the digital line, whatever that might be, they immediately transition into buyer's remorse. And sometimes this can last 5 minutes. Sometimes this can last 5 hours, but it's really fast. It's immediate. And if businesses are not addressing that moment of buyer's remorse in a really proactive way, the customer in that moment can actually be making a decision about if they're going to continue doing business with you. Did you win me and then you just completely forgot about me? Or did you win me and oh my gosh, did I make the right choice? I don't know. Like, is this too expensive? Should I have gone with the other option I had? I don't know. In that moment, businesses, instead of letting the customer just go through that on their own journey and have this moment of tumultuousness inside, they could instead send them a message saying, I'm so glad that you joined us and you made the right choice deciding to come with us. Here's actually what's going to happen next, but don't worry. We know what you're experiencing and we're here and in your corner. Even if that's sent in the first 5 minutes of signing on the line, the customer then goes, oh, these people are pros. And they're more likely to stick around. They're more likely to stay and retain. There's an old expression, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. And when it comes to customer retention, we want to be able to anticipate the journey, and not only from the what do we deliver and are we delivering it on time and at a certain level of quality, but are we addressing the customer's emotional need as well? Meeting them there is a critical step, but that's only one of those operational things. I could think of dozens, quite frankly, Krista, but this one is a big one and something that the listeners here today might be able to implement coming directly out of after listening to this podcast episode.
I think that's actually really huge because I think we make our buying decisions from that part of the brain that has no capacity for language. We say it feels right or it doesn't feel right. And so I think when something, when it seems to make sense and we pull the trigger, and then you're right, I have had those moments specifically where I've gone, oh gosh, did I do enough research? Having somebody come along behind and validate from where I'm feeling and then giving me an idea that they understand and what it's going to look like for me to go forward is hugely important, because now you are tapping into, they're staying with you based on belief. I want to be with a company that believes that how I'm feeling and what I'm going through is important, and the company is validating that, which I think creates a much stronger relationship. And Simon Sinek is a huge fan of this, like in terms of marketing and talking about things from the inside out instead of the outside in, like start with why. I love that. So I think it's so on point. So I want to talk a little bit about your rewire framework, because this is something you developed. Very exciting when you first shared it with me, but can you help us understand how we can use that to identify all the things that we're just kind of not seeing on our own? Because I think oftentimes we have a lot of blind spots.
Absolutely. And it's a blind spot also going back to the noise conversation of before, right? So many people are out there telling us that we need to do more, be more, put more campaigns out there, and most importantly, get new logos. And new logos are more valuable than existing logos or even logos that have been in our ecosystem before. So Rewire is a different way to look at revenue and revenue acquisition. Rewire your revenue stands for R is retention, keeping who you have. E is expansion. And that means looking at your existing customer base and saying, how can we transfer more value to them in such a way that they're willing to pay us for that value? It's not cross-sell, upsell. Nobody likes to be cross-sold or upsold. If you've ever been on you had a service call that you called into a telecom company or a utility company and they're trying to upsell you right on the phone, you're like, no, thank you. Nobody likes that. Not now, not ever. But they like to get more value. So that's E, expansion. W stands for win back. And win back means that someone has paid us at some point in the past, but they're not paying us today. So it gives us an opportunity to reach out to them and bring them back into the business and get the value that we can transfer to them. I stands for intercepting the lost deals. So this might be immediate, but this also might be a bit longer term as well. If you've ever lost a customer to a competitor and checked in 6 months later with that prospect, right? Because ultimately they were a prospect, not a customer. So if you ever lost a prospect to a competitor, checked in with them 6 months later and said, how's it going? They might be like, oh, it's a dumpster fire. Krista, I don't know. I made the wrong choice. I don't know what to do. That's a lost deal that you can then win back, right? And it's a form of a win back, but it's really intercepting the fact that they were lost, but they already know you, like you, and trust you. You were in their decision set before. So they're more likely to convert than not. Just need to stay in touch with them. That's I. And then the RE stands for referral. And sometimes we think of this as strategic referral partners, but we can also think about this in terms of existing referrals or referral partner sources, as well as prospective referral partner sources, right? So are we intaking when we receive a referral? We love getting referrals, right? And they're so easy and they convert really, really rapidly. But do we have the system in place to be able to accept that referral and then encourage and nurture those referral sources to eventually send us more? So Rewire is an alternative way to look at growing your revenue and growing your business without necessarily needing to feed the machines that steal your money and give you very, very poor returns.
I love that. It takes something that can be complicated and it breaks it down and it makes it so simple. And acronyms are such a great way to remember it. I want to ask you though, why, because you've talked about this, why do you think customer referrals are so underutilized? Because I think, along with you, I agree with you that they're a very profitable source of new business. So why are we underutilizing those?
I think we're underutilizing it from a consumer psychology standpoint of feeling like there's the law of reciprocity. And actually, one of the things that I need to bust through with some of the clients that I work with is the idea that, hey, if I send someone a referral, they're going to send it back to me. That's not necessarily the case. Or if I ask for a referral, then I'm going to get it. Or if I bake it into my contracts, which I've seen some clients do, when they're actually saying like, oh, you're going to love working with us so much that we're actually going to give you a discounted price, but you're going to send us 3 referrals. Like it feels icky. It feels bad, right? It feels like we're asking someone to go out of their way. And so we may do it once or twice, but like there's something that's weird about it. Or we're going to pay our customers to send us referrals, which is also another amazing one in my mind, because it's like you're doing this quid pro quo exchange of things that feels very transactional when truly, if you're giving someone a referral, it's because you want to help both the person that you're referring to and the person that you're referring in, right? There's a social capital here that I think can be played at to essentially say, I'm associated with this person and they're smart savvy, and I want you to be associated with it too. We don't lean into the behavioral psychology enough of, I'm actually just going to make you look good. That's it. It could be that simple. So I think that we don't do it because we're told by all those voices that we need to ask for it and that we need to give them something back and we need to discount our prices or whatever that might be. It just feels bad. Instead, we could take a very different approach to referrals where we plant seeds along the way that allow for people to think of us and then make really meaningful connections and relationships that persevere over a longer period of time.
I love that. I think it's so insightful. So we've spent a lot of time on this show talking about access to capital and funding because that is a really pivotal part of a business's growth. And we've seen everything from founders, trying to scale and expand using personal finances to learning, okay, I need the basics of business credit to, really high level capital asks, such as seeking money from investors. So how do some of these operational efficiencies that you're encountering with your clients really impact us from that standpoint of fundability, investor or otherwise?
Yeah. One of the biggest problems I see is that many businesses are optimizing or systemizing when it comes to top of funnel. Some are not even doing that. Some are just founder led and the founder swoops in and they're heroics and don't worry, I got this. I'm going to close this one, or that client's upset, so I'm going to step in. That's not sustainable, nor is it scalable. What I find is easier for businesses to make investments in is when we have a system that is simple enough that it can scale and it can actually be executed by non-A players. Right? If you have a B player on your team, and nobody really wants a B player because, again, all the noise in the market is telling us we need all A players all the time. But if you set up your revenue systems so that even a B player can execute it and win, you're going to have a sustainable and scalable system that's going to be much more attractive to investors because you're proving the model as you go. In fact, in talking with a number of different clients over time, I've found this really scary trend where even when it comes to getting PE investment or any other outside investors, sometimes businesses are building their 36 to 48 month runway to basically say, I want to either exit the business or I want to get this sold off to somebody else. But they're designing for that 36 to 48 month and they're not designing past it. And so investors are then coming in and going, yeah, this looks great, but not doing enough due diligence into the Rewire framework to say, how sustainable is this? And then when they acquire the business, it actually falls off a cliff. That growth that they saw falls off a cliff because the hero is gone. the founder is gone or that top salesperson isn't as interested or something changed in the business. Whereas if the businesses are building operational efficiencies, said differently, building a system that is simple enough, using each of the rewire elements so that even a B player can do it, you have sustainable growth over a longer term, and it looks more attractive to investors and increases the business's valuation. So it's not just about filling the funnel, but it's actually saying when they come into our funnel, what do we do with them then? And we need to decide where in rewire they fit.
I feel like when we simplify this all the way down, we're saying in the beginning, a lot of startups, it's like growth, go, 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 leads, sales, sales, go, go, go. And then I'll invest in systems. But it almost feels to me like we need to be paying a lot more attention to the way we want to scale so that as we're taking those steps, we're kind of evenly matched between sales, which is the gas, and typically operations, which we usually see as the brakes. They're kind of the ones in the background, like, whoa, 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 hold on, slow down. But I feel like that's something that we should be paying attention to from moment one, that it's oftentimes hard if you're a founder because you're wearing all of these different hats and it is you finding the leads and it is you closing. And so we end up with founder bottleneck syndrome. And then by the time we're bringing other people in, we're in this state of hurry, hurry, hurry. We don't necessarily have time to build the infrastructure to support. And then what we have is a giant mess. And so then we can't exit the way that we want to, or then we have to just full stop, which I know you've come in before with companies that were in that phase of, just panic, almost full stop, and having to essentially help them rewrite their entire go-to-market plan. So if we were to think about this from day one, when we're launching a company or first 6 months, what are just a couple simple things we could do on the system side that would make sure that while we're thinking about leads and we're considering rewire in there once we have business, that makes sure that we are equal on both sides of the fence, moving in lockstep?
Yeah. So you're talking about this concept of builder protector, right? And the idea is that you do not have to stop building in order to protect. You can actually do both simultaneously as long as your system is simple enough. What I think many business owners do is they step in and they say, well, I have a complex system right now. And so it's hard for me to actually write that down or build that SOP or put something together. And that's absolutely true. You can't scale complexity. You have to scale simplicity. So when businesses are getting started and maybe they're looking for funding or maybe they're just getting started, when it comes to their revenue, one of the first recommendations that I would make is that they're keeping score somewhere. Internet my internet's unstable. How about now?
Yes.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay. So I'm gonna say that a little bit different. I'm gonna repeat the question. So Krista, what you're talking.
Oh no.
So Krista, the question around builder versus protector, I think you can actually do both at the same time, especially when you're getting started. It requires the sales team, or in some cases the founder, to just be a little bit more diligent and making sure they're jotting things down. I was just talking with a founder this morning that has a Google sheet of all of the contacts that she has been connected with over the last 5 years. And she was looking at that today. And when as we were going through that list, I said, help me identify the ones that you could potentially work with again. And she spotted several of them and basically said, here's my short list. And we basically said, great, let's get out and go call them. The other thing that's really important is sometimes you don't have a Google sheet. Sometimes you don't have a CRM to go back and reference. I actually worked with another client that had this same exact experience. He and I were talking about win backs as well, and his need was basically to look at a list of people that he worked with in the past. And I said, hey, let's open that up. Let's look at that sheet. And he said, no problem. And then he's like wrestling this archaic customer relationship management database to the ground. And he's like, it's coming out wrong. It's giving me all the wrong data. And like he really was losing his stuff, right? And I said, hey, close the laptop, make eye contact. Let's look at each other. And I said, tell me 5 people that you would love to work with again. And he's like, oh, no problem. Boop, 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 boop. He listed them. I said, great. Now tell me 3 that you don't want to work with ever again. He's like, oh my gosh, never these. Oh, that makes me think though. Here are 5 more that I'd love to work with again. We had a list of 10 for him. Now, keep in mind that this business's average order value was about $19,000. $19,000. He called one of those people on his list of 10. So not only was it $19,000, but it typically took about 6 months to close a new logo. He called one of these, they closed it for $47K, and it took 3 weeks to close. So it closed faster, and it closed at more than double the average order value, which is not unusual for winbacks. Typically, when you're winning back a customer that knows you, likes you, and trusts you from the past, they will not only come in and be won faster, they're going to spend 67% more than someone who came in brand new. This is a stat from Bain & Co., as well as the fact that they're going to be more likely to refer you to others. So it's prudent for any business, even if you're in business 6 months and you have a lost customer or you have someone that you worked with in the past or a lost prospect, to always go back and have that conversation with them. So it's a place where I'd recommend that any business start is just by tracking it. And even if you don't have it written down somewhere, just use the good old noggin to write down a few names and then reach out to them and see if there's an opportunity for you to be able to help and support them.
Well, and I imagine if you're doing that, because memory joggers are huge. And yes, it feels like once you get the first few, then the momentum is flowing. And then you are getting all of that inspired thought. And then you can begin to use something as simple as a G sheet or an Excel sheet to kind of keep track of that. And, maybe a status in a notes column or something very, very simple. But how do you know it's time to get into a CRM? So where are you at? And you're thinking, okay, it's time for me to start spending money on that. I do need something a little more advanced than just this simple sheet that I'm on. When is it time for that?
It is likely time for that when you are spending more time maintaining the sheet. You are actually reaching out to the client. For many new businesses, I tell them all burn down your tech stack, like especially on the marketing technology side, just burn it down and start building anew. But you could start really simple with some very, very basic tools. One that I've heard of before is like Go High Level. You could do like a Pipe Drive is another one that several of my clients use. I've heard of others using, this is my favorite one. Actually, I have 2 clients that use this one, Less Annoying CRM. That's a thing. It's real. Less annoying
CRM. You're kidding. Less annoying CRM.
And I hope you and all of the listeners go and Google it right now because it is truly less annoying and that is a real thing. So remember I told you that there are about over 12,000 tools that are in market. Less annoying CRM is one of them. But I would say that it's likely time for a business owner to move from a Google Sheet into a CRM when they are spending more time administering than they are actually executing on that, or when they have multiple players coming to the table, because then you just have multiple spreadsheets and that's just a pain in the rear and you don't need to be dealing with that.
Fantastic. Less annoying CRM. I'm definitely going to check that out. That's a first. But what a differentiator, because that's actually huge in the marketing space. It's not enough to be better anymore. You need to be different.
That's right.
So talk about making yourself differentiated right in the title of your product. Okay, if you had to sit down and immediately have a business owner identify one area where they could potentially be leaving money on the table, where is the first place you're going to tell them to look? Because we've talked about a lot. We've covered a lot here. Where do I go first?
So there's some rules of with Rewire. There are some people that believe that retaining your client is going to be the least expensive and most impactful to your business. So if a business was just trying to DIY this and trying to understand exactly where to begin, I would always start with retention. I would look at retention, or the opposite of that, look at churn, and understand when you are potentially losing people and the impact of those that you are losing. I had a client that had an 85% retention rate, which many of us would be so satisfied to do, right, and to have in our businesses. But what they also found when they dove a little deeper is that the ones that were churning, that 15%, were the really high ticket ones. Yikes. Right. So even though they had a really nice high retention rate and they were seeing it, when they dove into the numbers, they saw that a lot of the revenue was walking out the door. I would, if I were coming in cold and someone had to say, where do I start? I would look there first. I think it's the best way to create revenue continuity and to preserve your business and give you a really strong baseline. And one of the other things that I would recommend they do is to consider each of the rewire elements: retention, expansion, win back, lost deals, and referral, and identify which of those are underutilized and could be potentially spruced up pretty easily, and then build a simple system around it to be able to sustain it. So if you had to start somewhere, I would say look at retention first, and then from there to take a look at rewire on the whole and see where you can get the most bang for your buck, so to say.
I think your retention example is spot on for why data needs context. So you can't just look at the numbers, but you really have to understand what the numbers are telling you. And I think a lot of times, sometimes we don't always know. So I think that's spot on. So Candice, how can everybody find you on LinkedIn, social media, your website? Let everybody know how they can connect to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm fairly active there, and I'm Candice Frazer, Frazer. You can reach me there, or you can come to AlphaRev's website. That's getalpharev.com. And for listeners today, if they want to, also on that website, there is a take a diagnostic. It is a short tool that they can look into to understand some preliminary aspects about Rewire for themselves. So I can help some of these businesses with a deeper dive into their revenue audit and look at these in depth. But if they just want to get started and get an idea of maybe where they're hanging out, they can take that initial diagnostic right on the website.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, you heard it here first. Get out there, connect to Candice on LinkedIn, and pop on out to her website and get a hold of that diagnostic. I have seen Candice's tools firsthand, and they are fantastic. You do not want to miss out on this offer for something very quick to tell you if you are headed in the right direction with your business. Candice, thanks again for joining us. And until next time, everybody.